Welcome to the Tragedy Academy, where you are the teacher and we are the students. Together, we will learn from past tragedy to lay the foundation for a better humanity. The only supplies you'll need, an open mind and a sense of humor. So, tilt that chair back, talk out of turn, and never raise your hand, because this is the Tragedy Academy, and class is in session. Non-pura scholar.
I do. I don't take anything seriously. I stopped 3 years ago.
I did as soon as I found out who my family was when I was about 3 months old. I never took anything seriously ever again.
That's amazing. That's how you open up a show, actually. Welcome to the Tragedy Academy, a show created to bridge societal divides in a judgment-free zone using candor and humor. My name is Jay, and my co-host Gary's in studio today. How you doing, Gary?
Great. How you doing?
I am so good today. So excited. Today we are joined by the legendary Ellie Neidhart, wife of the past Jim the Anvil Neidhart, the legend. And she has graced us with her presence today and going to share some stories, some anecdotes, and different things from her times in her life, as well as her time with Jim. We're super excited to hear about it. I myself, this is the era that I grew up in. And I think the first time I met you, Ellie, I came up to you and I told you, thank you. I didn't even know who you were until my wife pointed you out. And for some reason, I wanted to say that because that era, there was such a limited amount of information that we could take in or entertainment. And that little bit that we received was from your husband. You know, every week it gave us an escape, and it was the coolest escape ever. And I still on the show want to thank you, because I realize that's a lot of sacrifice to have somebody in the entertainment industry like that gone so long every year. So this is me geeking out a little bit. Your husband was super cool to me, and I appreciate you and what you sacrificed, for us, for him to be able to do that.
Oh, well, thanks very much for the kind words towards him. He was one of a kind. As far as the wrestling world goes, he fit the mold perfectly. He was basically the same person inside the wrestling ring and at home. That's how he was, quite honestly.
Jim the Anvil was the Anvil at home. And
yes, he was.
Really? Because that's actually one of the questions I had. He was the Anvil to all of us. When we watched him, there's a certain amount of persona that we assume is in that role. But what you're telling me, he lived it.
Oh, he was one of a kind. They said in Cool Hand Luke, George Kennedy actually said it. He was an original, but that was basically. The first time I ever met him was with my dad. He called my dad. He wanted to get into wrestling. Somebody in California told him about my dad, and he called my dad on the phone. He wanted to learn how to do amateur wrestling, and someone told him, a guy named Malin Wilkes, who had a bodybuilding gym in California, told him that he had $1 million body in the wrestling business. And so he ended up calling my dad and asking my dad if my dad would be interested in training him and how much money he'd need to get up here. So he sent my dad his resume, and, it was a fairly, major, he had, stuff about his football career in high school and stuff. And a lot of times wrestlers in the day would send up these really major things looking like they had all this to offer. And then you'd see them, and instead of being 6'1", they were actually only like 5'7" and never played ball or did anything in there.
For those of you in podcast land, Gary just raised his hand, the 5'1" piece.
So my mother wasn't expecting Jim to be anything from the little resume that he sent up in the mail to my dad. My mom was kind of rolling her eyes like, oh, we're going to get another one of these guys that, are going to have to, say sorry, but you're not. But anyway, long story short, Jim was much more than anything my dad could have ever imagined. And so my dad took him into the basement, and when he finally got him up to Calgary on $50, my dad told him to bring up $50. He came up on a Greyhound bus with $50 to his name. And I think was just smitten with my dad as my dad was with him, because they were both unbelievable athletes. And my dad had been amateur champion of Canada at one time. And so,
Well, for those of you who don't know, I mean, you come from a legendary family. Your brother is Bret Hart. Your father's Stu Hart. That's the Calgary Stampede. This is where we got all of our wrestling from. You're awfully humble, but the family is something that I think a lot of wrestling fans out there are going to probably tune into this, just because you're sitting in that chair and they're going to be sitting there going, that's the Hart family. That's the Hart. Say something about, that's what I would be doing.
They were very iconic. The Stampede wrestling was like no other wrestling that's ever been to me. It's the best wrestling that's ever existed. Aside from all that, my dad took Jim into the basement and taught him all kinds of amateur stuff in the dungeon. Yeah, it was really just.
You don't want your father-in-law taking you somewhere called the dungeon.
Yeah, I was wondering what the basement of Calgary looked like back in the day. It's like wasn't like all finished.
Dad's house was this old mansion that was like a 22-room old thing that you'd think that there were wolves howling outside the door in the wintertime. It's like kind of like that, and it was absolutely crummy. Cats and dogs and people going in and out. And my mother never cleaned in her life. There was spider webs, cobwebs.
I love this.
Yeah, it's a real haunted house. And I mean, I think it legitimately was haunted. But anyway, so Jim was fascinated by all of it. I think he was not expecting anything that he got. It was very surreal. And after my dad got through with Jim, he brought him upstairs into the kitchen and introduced me. And of course, my dad had always told us the girls never ever watched the wrestling when we were little. It was just strictly for the boys, and I had 8 brothers. And told us never to date wrestlers because they were ne'er-do-wells. They had nefarious intentions, to put it mildly. So anyway, I was quite rude to Jim when I first met him, not realizing that I was quite curt with him, not overly nice or anything, kind of a bit standoffish, thinking that was the way to be. And of course, Jim was smitten with my dad first. I think they had a bromance right away, and then I ended up he ended up liking me, but he stayed up there because he was really fascinated by my dad. And then about a year later, things kind of burgeoned with us. We kind of up the
who pursued who first?
Oh, it was definitely him. 100% him.
100% Jim. How did he pursue? What was his go-to or dating or wooing Ellie Neidhart?
Well,
Ellie Hart.
First time that I ever went out on a date with Jim, he wanted to know if I wanted a doobie, and I was like, "What the hell is a doobie?" I had no idea, because I'm from,
you're from Canada and Calgary.
And he's from LA, and he was very chilled. He was probably the hippest person I'd ever met in my life, but he was very foreign because he was from California, and he was huge. He was about 310 at the time. And he had not an ounce of fat on him. He was this big muscular shot putter who had just placed like 3rd in the world in Russia about 2 years before. Been over and he was a legitimately world's class athlete: football, shot putting, track and field. He was like unbelievable. So anyway, this was just kind of overwhelming to me. And, so he kind of kept on asking my brother Bruce why I wouldn't go out with him. And I was like, I remember one time he came to the house on a Saturday night. My dad actually gave him the night off so he could take me out on a date, and taking me to this really fancy restaurant. And I told him that I was busy cleaning the house and that I couldn't. He said, "You'd rather clean the house and go out for a nice." And I said, "Yes, I would." So that was kind of left me alone for about 4 months, and then finally, my brother Bruce said, "Just really wants to just take you out on a nice date. And, you've got nothing to lose. If worst case scenario is you'll get a free meal out of it." So
this is true.
Yeah. And finally, when I went out for a real date with him, we ended up watching Lady and the Tramp at a drive-in movie theater, and that was one of the things that we did because I wanted to see that. And
he's smooth. That is a smooth choice for a first date. Lady and the Tramp. It's very soft. It's loving, romantic. It's not overbearing. That's a smooth move.
You gotta go
for it. He was really quite sweet. He was never, a pushover. He was actually a very shy guy. But 40 years later, we had 3 kids and, really quite crazy about each other. And it was destiny, He, the minute that he called my dad was a part of a destiny that he didn't even know that was, I always feel that was supposed to be that way. Like we would have never met except that it was, out of our control. So I really believe that.
I would even say that it sounds like your father's friendship with him was the only gateway that he could have come through to meet you. And the fact that he approved of him ahead of it is probably a great thing.
Oh, yeah, getting past 8 brothers and the dad, like, he's a good guy.
I'm not
Even let
walking
him
into
near
the
you.
I'm not walking into
Yeah.
the Hart household looking for dates. No way.
If I go, they have 8 brothers, and this is my dad. I'm like, oh, okay, I left something in my car. You're never seeing me again.
All of them wrestlers.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, they're like, where are you
The more he
going?
saw of it, the more he wanted. It's like he couldn't get enough of our crazy family. And he has one sister who he was close to, Debbie, and that was it. No brothers or anything. And then, he met when he, married me. He, married, 8 brothers plus Davy Boy and Dynamite were very close to him too. So he just got this, talk about, testosterone filled, like he got it all. So it was.
Yeah, that whole entire era and gimmick, and I hate even saying the word gimmick because it's not. It was such a great display of characters and the plot lines and the way that everybody interacted with each other, but they was acrobatic and it seemed like they were constantly putting themselves in so much danger. And that actually leads me to a question, because you obviously you're gonna have a different perspective coming from such a huge wrestling family. But when the love of your life is out there putting his, life on the line for entertainment in some situations, was there ever a time where something was brought up that he should do or they might try that you said absolutely not?
No, I never knew. Funny thing with the wrestling, I've always protected and defended anything that was, maybe considered, illegitimate or fake.
No way.
But that's just how we kind of rolled. And Jim never discussed any of the wrestling element with me ever, and I never went to any of the wrestling matches ever, except for maybe when WrestleMania or Hall of Fame or something where we had to be there. It's like he kind of, and I always just respected that because that's always how it was with, my dad too. The boys just quietly did their thing and never brought it home really outside of, like just in the gym. That's just how it was. So if anything ever happened, I never knew about it till, the next day.
when he told you what he did and then you were mad at what he did because of what he risked, or
I never, and it was never a time that I ever was mad about anything that happened to him in the ring, because I just respected that it was that everybody was doing the
Their
best
art.
they could, and it's very physical, the wrestling, but they would travel on the road together so much that they kind of got to talk about what they would be maybe going to be trying or doing. And so I just like with a football game or anything and all the passes and things that go on, you just kind of respected that they would just do what they were going to do. And if by any remote chance that somebody ended up with an injury or something, which happens, of course, I would respect that it was, not intentional and just deal with it. I never had any time where I ever had any animosity towards anybody for
that's
anything
good
like
to
that.
hear. It gives him a safe environment to work with him without any clouded judgment or thinking of what could possibly happen. That's amazing way to look at it.
Them as entertainers is, I've worked for the UFC for the last 20 years almost, and I work with professional athletes a lot. And the entertainment part, there's a lot of people that are athletic and physical and could probably learn the moves and stuff like that. But to entertain people, to be on, and that part impressed me. Like, I'm usually never on a microphone. Yesterday, I screwed this all up. Like, I'm always behind the camera. Like, I get nervous, and I've interviewed 10,000 people before. But, for them to be able to turn it on, be physical, and they actually get hurt out there, but not to let on, my arm is broken right now, but I'm not in a real fight, you tap out and it's over. But they're like, I got to finish the match. And, to entertain people and, the interviews and the selling and cut the promos, to me, that's almost more impressive. I grew up in Cleveland around tons of athletes, and obviously I, couldn't play football in these, but having that ability and then figuring out how to be an entertainer too, and play a character enough where it's believable. But I think the best characters are ones that are really themselves, but turn it up a notch.
That's what it is. You have to be a character to begin with to really fit into the world of wrestling. Be different from the day, you were old enough to talk and realize that, you weren't like other people, or that you were a little bit more flamboyant, or
Centric and
They wore
That's
pink.
our whole
Like men didn't
family
wear
was
pink
like
back
that.
then. Like they got guys wearing pink in my neighborhood in East Cleveland, which the
with
hood,
tassels.
like
Tassels.
it would have never been a thing. Like pimps will maybe pull it off, but we're wearing pink shirts all of a sudden, and we're like, I'm Anvil and he's Bret Hart, and
Yep.
like that was broke down things that people wouldn't do.
you have
You
to
know,
kind of have a passion for the wrestling world, and really just love what you were doing, but have a good sense of humor about things. And most of the wrestlers are more upbeat than not. Like they see the glass as half full, and that's why they can deal with being on the road over 300 days of the year, and dealing with not being around their spouses, and but they, they're always upbeat. Like my husband was actually and my brother Brett and Owen, and
you have to love it.
Yeah.
they're very upbeat.
absolutely.
And my dad was always like such a happy person. And I have to say, most of the wrestlers that I know, like they're all huge animal lovers. Like they're really great guys. Like there's very few of them that I would ever say anything bad about.
I would second that. And Gary and I were talking the other day about wrestling. We were geeking out a little bit about you coming on. And one of the things that I always loved about wrestling was the fact that the first 10 rows at every event that you show up at has people with disabilities, people with, that are special needs, or any kind of person that would, or you see that they bring children and people that are, they don't have the ability to get to these things, and they're catering to those first few rows more than anybody else. You'll watch wrestlers have so much fun with a kid that thinks that it is real as, real can be, and enjoy it. It's amazing to watch. But I do want to point out the acting thing. I think that wrestlers are the best actors ever, especially during that era, because how many of us believed it was real for so long?
And you're getting punched in the face while you're acting. Like take
That's
Tom Cruise and start dropping him on his head and tell him to like stay in character and like deliver the lines and like adapt. Like I know they have like maybe a loose script, but it goes left and you got to just change and go with it and like be real in the moment. That's tough.
My dad always defended the wrestling so much that when we were little, we never ever had a clue that it was a work. And most of it, it's. I say that the only ones who know what's real are the wrestlers, because that's really kind of how I look at it. But I remember when my dad was doing an angle with Archie Goldie, and he was called the Stomper, and put a cast on his
What a name.
Dr. Speak, actually, my dad's actual legitimate doctor had the cast on my dad's arm, and then my dad sawed it down the thing so he could take it off and on. But the kids never knew that. And I remember when we were going to school, and they're all asking us how my dad's arm was and stuff, and then we were like, "Oh, it's doing okay." We never knew that we never, kind of ever. To this day, I still kind of defend legitimacy of the wrestling as an actual sport, not just it's the entertainment world. And Vince McMahon kind of shifted it into a different dynamic, which is just the way they had to do with dealing with whatever the situations were at the time. But I still don't like to ever I defend it still to this day.
You should absolutely.
The holds
Those
of
are athletes.
and like be able to do all this thing properly, the technical abilities of it.
They're all pretty good amateur wrestlers. The ones that came from Calgary, my brothers were all unbelievable amateur wrestlers. And Jim had learned a lot of amateur from my dad before he ever got into WWE. There were 4 years of really strong training in Calgary where Jim got his roots. So he's wrestling like Junkyard Dog and Jake Roberts.
God, I love that.
Still, every time there's a chain around, I put it around my neck and pretend I'm the Junkyard Dog. Like any time.
My friend Nick wouldn't let me put his parrot on my shoulder and pretend to be Coco Beware the other day.
Coco, he and Jim and Owen all had fun together.
I hurt myself jumping off everything, being Coco Beware and Jimmy Superfly Snuka as a kid. Like it was our soap opera. Like
it really was.
We didn't have stuff like that. I had 3 channels. I'm in my 40s. I grew up in Cleveland. We were poor. Like we had 3 channels. Like Saturday main event or something would come on. Like, and you never knew because there's no TV guide or anything. And we'd wait every Saturday.
Yeah,
it was on. We were never happier than it was.
Saturday
like
morning.
randomly.
Saturday morning and Saturday afternoon.
Me and Gene Okerlund on there, Bobby the Brain Heenan, all of them talking.
Guys, all of them, like they were all dear friends to Jim, and
they were our family too. That's honestly the way it looked like to us. I can tell you that, the family that I grew up in, much like Gary, it was a poor family, not many channels. We lived in the middle of nowhere, and things weren't always going the greatest at home. However, Saturday morning, when that came on, nobody was fighting. Everybody was enjoying it. It was a time where it was like a ceasefire and everybody was happy. And that's honestly the thanks that I feel like everybody wants to give Russ, because it gives you that vacation, from your life. And it's a mindful moment. I always tell people when they come on the show, we have mindful moments in which we create, and we dedicate our mindful moments to other people. We haven't been using them ourselves. So as creators, the onus is on us to utilize the mindful moments with which we create for good, for something that is going to affect change or give people that escape, not give them the anxiety or anything like that. And that's why I think, honestly, it's because it really is the peace of mind that you get during that moment, watching somebody authentically do the craziest shit that you could ever watch.
In the day, and I think it's like that a little bit now, but back when my dad's territory was around and Vince's was getting going in the 80s, I think what the fans loved was that if they had a really rotten SOB of a boss, which a lot of them did, they could go home and get it out of their system screaming. And the wrestlers really wanted to kind of, their personas were meant to kind of get the fans going behind it, but their passion and everything that they did was, that's what I think why wrestling still exists to this day, because you can go home and really just like everything, the whole week of stress, and just all be obliterated in, a good hour of, watching good guy beat the bad guy kind of thing. That's what it's about.
That's a great point to bring up. And that's that transference that we have. We get so locked up in our day-to-day lives, and we have all of this pent up anger or anxiety. And when you see that kind of situation, they're actually helping you release the same issue you have your boss with Vince McMahon or something like that. They are picking select groups that they represent, slices of the pie, and giving them that voice. And that's a great way to put it.
Seemed diverse too, like way back in the day when there wasn't like a lot of black people or different ethnicities, Iron Sheik, like there wasn't a lot of different people, it seemed like, on TV growing up. And but wrestling always had everybody. And going to the events now, I have a friend that works for the WWE, and I have young nephews and they're huge fans. So there's a while, 10-year period where I didn't really watch much. And then I started bringing them, and it's every walk of life. I never see any arguments, fight. I mean, they'll argue because of the wrestlers they like, but not like real, but you'll see every walk of life, old, young, black, white, mixed, like everybody is at these events, and like you don't hear politics, you don't hear religion, you don't hear any BS.
No,
like people are just having a good time.
Women too. That's one of the cool things about that sport, is that it really is men and women together in it and competing at such a high level with each other. And I think that's a rare thing in the sports world, to see male and female athletes getting the opportunity to perform at such a high level as equals.
Yeah, that's
we don't really give them that opportunity. And that's one of the things that's so great about that whole entire industry.
Yeah, it's a different world with wrestling than any other, job. And I think it's what you said, diversity and respect for each other. And there's no room for politics there, really,
Yeah, unless it's part of the act from back in the 80s.
Right.
The Iron Sheik really did. He took a lot of the pent up communist and Middle Eastern rage of America out on him in the middle of that ring every single.
I loved him though. I was camel clutching
camel
people all the time.
My brother was in the camel clutch probably most of his childhood.
Iron Sheik was came up to Calgary and wrestled for my dad long before he was in WWE, and he was a great guy. He was one of my husband's best friends. Cosro was his first name, but he was just such a wonderful, and he was a very good amateur athlete. Like he could probably annihilate anybody that ever got too close to pissed him off, but he wouldn't do that.
No, I probably still wouldn't. I think he's still around.
But
guys like that don't have to be in tough.
And they never, the thing about guys like him and Nikolai and stuff, they were just these big pussycats, you know. When my husband used to wrestle for Bill Watts in, Louisiana, but Nikolai was, and Barry Darso, and they would always come and knock at the door when Jim was wrestling in Japan. And we were stuck in this little spot, Old Hammond Highway, anyway. But Nikolai would end up knocking at the door, and Barry, just to make sure that we were okay. And Jenny they were just babies, my guys. All three of them were like under 3 years old. So it's kind of, but that's just, they were big softies mostly.
I could imagine so, because when you're that kind of, you know, loving person for all those people in those front rows, you're the same outside of that too. You can't not be.
You don't have to act tough if you are tough.
Yeah,
You
this
know,
is true.
like you're
You can
300
act like a
pounds
teddy
and
bear.
like could beat anybody up. I'm the 5'5" guy at the bar, like chirping to like act tough, not the guy that could actually beat up everybody. You know.
They were always very kind to kids too. Like that was like, they're just the way they were. They were just
Always
those
see
gentle
that.
giants. Yeah, they love children and animals. I'm telling you, they're really gentle giants. People don't understand wrestling or wrestlers. They think that because of the image that they portray, but they're also softies. You know,
That's great to hear. It makes it even better to know that one of those guys are out there 1 minute fighting a turnbuckle, and the next minute they're holding, you know, a little itty bitty Pomeranian dog. And but it always happens that way. And we've been saying a lot of great things about Jim and that career, but I really want to ask, because we're in a day and age where there's so many ways to communicate with each other. And we see that you had mentioned 300 days
or
And-
more.
Yeah, or more. 300 days or more as a single mother at home, maintaining a love and relationship with a husband that's traveling everywhere is something that we couldn't even fathom today. And you did it.
Yeah.
You did it against all odds. And I'm curious to see how that, how did you get through that?
Well, today is Mother's Day, so I will have to
I know.
say
Happy Mother's Day.
thank you. How I got through it, quite honestly, is that I had wonderful kids. My husband was gone all the time, and so it was just me and my kids living by ourselves most of the time. We were not living in Canada. We were on our own, and we just had this unbelievable, friendship with each other. And my kids were always making me laugh, and we would just do stuff. And it was what got me through everything. And then when my husband would come home for the maybe 2 or 3 days that he got to come home and bring home a little bribery, a little doll or something for each of them, and promise them that they got to go to 7-Eleven for the cheap candy, and that was it. And and that was how it always was. And I just got through it because my kids were so good. My dad was always there for me. I had about $1 million in phone bills at the time.
I was going to say, what's it like, dropping quarters into a payphone outside of a motel in 1982? It was like $1 million. AT&T owned everything then.
Phone bills were expensive.
I never think that way. Yeah. I mean, now it's like cell phone, FaceTime, whatever. Back then it was like half the rent.
Yeah, half the rent for a call over 30 minutes. It was across the country. It would be ridiculous. So, I mean, that's why I ask. I mean, if you could tell people today ways that they could foster that kind of loving relationship with that kind of separation, what would you tell them were some of the ways that they could do that?
Quite honestly, just be kind to each other when you're with each other, to kind of, hope that whatever, you instill in each other is there when the passion's there when you're not around each other. And, family is the most integral thing in our lives, it always has been mine. So that I couldn't say more than that. And, if he's being a really, really rotten, just, put a can of half-open sardines in his bag and let him know that you're
Did this happen?
Just slip that in there.
That never happened. I think I saw it on an old gangster movie.
That's amazing, though.
Yeah.
But no.
You might not get back to Las Vegas without sardines in your bag.
Oh man, I hate fish too.
That's too easy to grab a hold of.
But no, we just had to respect each other and be there for each other when he was home, and hope that when he was on the road that he was all the time we spent when we were together paid off how it really was. And then a lot of long distance phone calls.
So, I mean, what I hear is making sure that you're mindful when you're with the person that you love, that you're not thinking about the future or the past. You're actually enjoying the time that you have together in the moment. And I think that that's very important, and that most people should practice what they preach when it comes to things like that.
Yeah, we really did. For 40 years, I had, such, a wonderful relationship. And it wasn't all, just sunshine and roses either.
Of course not.
It was very legitimate, where we really loved each other. And that's still, to this day, it's the only person in my life outside of my children.
You don't see people as successful as they are in their careers or as happy as they are in their roles if their familial unit isn't solid, or that they don't have the support at home to go with it, or at least some form of people that they have chosen in their life that acts as a surrogate family or something along that lines. Because I see that
That's the backbone, isn't it?
it really is. And I didn't see that my whole childhood. I often looked at everything else going around me instead of what was actually happening in front of me. And the more that I realized that everything else was kind of not in the now, it wasn't here with me in this exact moment, it made me realize that, my family and my friends are the closest thing to me at any given time. And that's really what matters. The rest of it's just BS.
Yeah, it's cotton candy, compared to
That.
it just melts in your mouth, but it's not real, But having, like my dad, having 12 kids, and then the wrestling business, and, taking care of the wrestlers too, and, never ever once let anybody down, and that was a strong skeleton, strong, like he was a tree trunk with all the limbs. But, and that's how I've raised my kids. And, and then my husband, needed that. And then he had all my brothers too. That's like, he just kept on being, like this big unit. And I think that's what helped us get through everything. And to this day, everybody in my family, all my brothers and sisters, we all just, adored Jim, despite things, that sometimes went amiss. He always just, everybody, had such strong, devotion to each other. You could have fights on the road and stuff. As soon as you get home, it was like, what are you going to have for Sunday dinner? And that was just the way it was. There was never anybody ever like any animosity or anything. It's really strong.
Do you think people were able to get through things more back then? Like relationships are just, people bail so quickly now, but
Yeah.
you said it wasn't all sunshine and roses, but you worked through it. You stayed
Always.
together. You guys figured it out as a family and as a couple.
Yep.
Now it seems like it's a little hard and people just go, they just break up or they do, whatever. And do you think it was harder these days to do that? Or do you think we're just not as good of people?
I think it's not that it's harder. I think that people don't maybe want to put the effort in if they're not sure, And in my case, I knew as soon as we were together long enough to really realize that this was it was like a destiny.
When we're not authentic in anything that we do, especially love, we can't expect somebody else to love us back if we don't authentically love them. If it's all surface, then how are they going to even reciprocate? They can't. You absolutely cannot. Absolutely cannot.
Cats, the other thing I have to say, go out there and get yourself a few cats. That always seems to help.
I'm allergic to cats.
I am so glad you brought this up. Okay, so first of all, your cats are adorable.
Thank you.
But I do have to ask, why do they all look so angry? They all have like that angry face. And I think that Jim had the same look every time he got angry in the ring. When I said,
And it's like
That-
all wrestlers
Yeah,
look
that
mean, but they're
like-
actually super nice.
The eyebrows.
the eyebrows, yeah. It's like, I love your cats. They're super cute, but they look so angry at life.
Yeah, those, yeah, that's good. I love that analogy with him. But yeah, no, we just love animals and stuff. So
You bring up animals a lot. So Jim was passionate about animals as well.
he was the biggest animal lover I ever saw, except for maybe my dad and his dad. They were, I remember, so many times that Jim had this absolutely wonderful little dog named Mr. Peabody. He was a cross between a Chihuahua and a pug, and he was
This is
quite
amazing.
small. He was like maybe about a 28. It's about the size of a cat, 28-inch high dog, but with a little bagel tail and stuff on him. But he was looked. When Jim was with him, looked like a Dr. Seuss character and the little dog, and Jim would be riding on his bicycle with Peeps on his leash, and that was like they'd ride all around the block and stuff. And Jim always made sure that he was always, pampered. And then at night he would go sleep in the bed and crawl to the bottom of the, underneath the cover, stick his head out and always sleep right next to Jim's feet. And he lived to be 17 years old, Mr. Peabody. And every now and again you'd hear Jim going, Peabody, like that when Peabody was, kind of exasperated, making him take him out for an extra.
That makes me love him even more,
He's a
knowing that
huge
there's a
Anvil lover.
Mr. Peabody out there running around with Jim the Anvil Neidhart. That's even better. Even better.
Well, I have to say, this little dog, not to get off on a tangent, but when we first got him, my daughter Muffy duped us, and somebody had given her this little dog, and she told us that it was a full-grown, she had said it was like a miniature mastiff or something. The dog was only about maybe 6 inches tall at the time. Jim and I ended up getting totally sucked in by this dog, and we took it over to my dad's house to show everybody for the Sunday dinner, and somebody had a pair of wire-rimmed glasses and put them on the dog, and they said that it looked like Mr. Peabody from the old Rocky and Bullwinkle show, and that's how it got its
Love
name.
that cartoon.
And it
that's how
wasn't
he
a
got its name.
mastiff. It just got this big and never started.
Yeah,
But anyway, that
that's
was
super cute. That's super, super cute. No, I've actually convinced a few people that, when you meet that person that pretends like they know everything about dogs and they're going to give you, that advice. And I have a bull mastiff, Riley. Everybody's seen her. She's might be in the studio. I'm not sure. But bull mastiffs look similar to pugs. And more often than not, I have told people like that she was a giant pug, specially bred, and that now you can find them in certain areas and they'll agree with you. Oh, yeah, I heard about those. I'm like, sure you did. Like, it's a bull mastiff. So, Ellie, I want to thank you so
my
much
pleasure.
for coming in here. And I want everybody to know that when people put in the time and the effort into those moments when you spend time with each other, the benefits far outweigh anything else out in life. And I want everybody to see that you spent those mindful moments together with Jim. And that's where all of this love comes from, enjoying each other authentically. And I got to say, the more that you tell me that you see Jim, always the same at home and the same out there, that explains so much more about how successful and convincing he was, because he was always being himself. If you're 100% authentic in life, you're going to go 110% further every single time, because people are going to accept you for who you are. And it sounds like you two accepted each other for who you were. And I think that that's something that everybody out there should take away from this.
Oh,
And so thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for that. Oh, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me here and wanting to. I appreciate it.
100%. Our pleasure. 100%.
You were responsible either directly or indirectly for the entertainment of millions and millions, starting with your family at home in Canada and the people that they taught, and then the people that they taught and they taught. And like, if you really think about it, in Calgary, which most people have never been, started something that has gone worldwide a million times around, and like generations of stuff that, minus 10 degrees in Cleveland pours dirt. Me and my brother sharing a bowl of cereal, watching that.
Oh.
Like, I'll start crying if I talk about it too much, but it's like, I was the Anvil. He was Bret Hart. He had the glasses. I always had a flat top growing up, like broke his ankles both at the same time once, like crazy
God.
story, but on accident. But like, we just like, it was, passing the time, like bringing people together. And it was just like this is going to last for the next 5 generations of this, what started in Canada. Like, it's kind of nuts to think about.
That's so nice to hear. We're, really have such a strong fan base from, from all over Germany and France and Japan and stuff forever since we were little. But, we've always loved to know that the reason that we are who we are and can, live the lifestyle that we live is because of our fans. The fans are everything. We are nothing without the fans.
That resonates with them. And I think that we should probably end on that note. We are nothing without them. Thank you so much. I genuinely appreciate you being here. Gary, you got anything?
I have a million questions, but we maybe should do this again at a different time.
We should. I think we should. Jesse, we left you out here. Jesse, you got anything? All right. Remember, everybody.
Wonderful meeting you all.
Likewise. Be cool and keep learning.
Thanks.